I want to talk a bit. About karma and evil, and I don't know everyone who's on here, so I'm going to ask that we just take a moment and all go around and introduce ourselves, although I think many of you do know each other. So I'm Roger Cochran, Seigetsu. I'm located in Fayetteville, Georgia, and I'm practice leader for the South Atlanta Zen Sangha. And I do want to start out by introducing our co-leader at the Sangha, Rugen David Toon. David's waving now. So when we do a breakout, depending upon where we are, David may be leading one of the breakouts. I will say that he's been generous in taking time out of his practice to sit with us, and so he may or may not be able to stay with us for the entire time, depending upon his patient's needs. So, David, would you like to say something more?
Sure. So just make sure that I can be heard. We got audio? Okay, good, great. Hi, my name's David Toon, and I'm joining you from Fayetteville, Georgia, and I am Roger's Zen buddy down here in Fayetteville, and I have an acupuncture practice and an acupuncture clinic, and my staff was very generous in rearranging our lunch break so that I could actually treat straight through and then use this as our lunch break and then join you today. So I am an acupuncturist, and I do have the interesting opportunity to use a very old medicine that dates back to around the time that our source texts were written in Buddhism. And it's a joy to practice Chinese medicine, Asian medicine, and practice Zen and see how each tie into each other. So thank you.
Thank you, Rugen. I'll ask our folks at Mission Mountain Zen to introduce themselves.
Hello, I think everybody knows me. I'm Zenku. We're way up in northwest Montana. And this is Kushin. We're holding down the fort up here.
PJ, you're next on my screen.
Hi, I'm PJ Jones. I am part of the new Birmingham affiliate. And so I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, and been practicing almost 10 years now, but it's been on my own. So this is my first opportunity to practice with a Sangha. So I'm glad to be here.
PJ, welcome. We're glad to have someone from Birmingham. Look forward to seeing more of you.
Thank you.
Lee.
Hi, my name's Lee Wallace, and I live in Ronan, Montana, and I practice with Zenku and Kushin.
Thank you. Sangaku.
I'm Dan Jocelyn. I'm the senior teacher at the Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha, Falmouth, Massachusetts on Cape Cod.
Thank you. Elliston Roshi.
I'm Hojo, the epitome of evil.
Amy.
Hi there, my name is Amy. I live in Falmouth, Massachusetts, and I practice with the Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha.
Mokyo, I see we're being overwhelmed by Falmouth, but welcome.
Hello everyone. I'm Moko Nancy Sherwood. I'm a member of the Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha, and I am their practice leader. It's so nice to be here.
Kuwa-san.
Hello, I'm joining you from Southwest Montana today. Nice to see everyone. Thank you.
I I do want to add that Kua-san is the person who manages and organizes our Tuesday evening Dharma discussion groups. And I urge you, if you have the opportunity to participate in that group, to do so. It's a place to meet others and hear our widely divergent points of view about what Zen means. Jeff.
My name is Jeff Wood, and I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm an athletic trainer at the University of Tennessee, and I love traditional Chinese medicine. So that's awesome. And I've been attending the Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha via Zoom the past few days.
Thank you, Jeff. Carla, I have your name up, but no image. Are you present and able to tell us about yourself?
I am present, and thank you. And I'll briefly show you my image. Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. I live in Middle Georgia. I've been living in Middle Georgia for about 6 months, maybe a little over. And I connected with Atlanta Soto Zen Center not too long ago via the San Francisco Zen Center, where I'm still a practicing member as well. And so I've been involved with Zen Buddhist studies since about 2018. I'm glad you all are here and happy to be with you.
Thank you, Carla. Welcome. Well, today I want to do a talk exploring a little bit about karma and evil. And we open every Zen service meeting with a chant. It says, all my past and harmful karma, born from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. And we chant that 3 times. I'll ask you to join me on the second chant. All my past and harmful karma, born from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. All my past and harmful karma, born from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. We follow that with the 3 refuges. I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Sangha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha. I take refuge in Buddha, the fully awakened one. I take refuge in Dharma, the compassionate teaching. I take refuge in Sangha, the harmonious community. I have completely taken refuge in Buddha. I have completely taken refuge in Dharma. I have completely taken refuge in Sangha. So you may hear some sound from my background. I think it may be my wife's phone trying to reach me. We open all of our Zen services with this set of chants. And I'd like for us to take some time this morning and think about what this means. The chant tells us that karma originates with ourselves. And Elliston Roshi, in his book, The Original Frontier, on pages 176 to 178, explores some of this relationship between our free will, karma, our actions, and the things that we do. I think everyone here is probably aware of this new book from Hojo, The Original Frontier. I do want to urge you to add it to your reading list. not only because it supports what many other teachers have to say, but because it makes much clearer what can be very opaque. The Shambhala Dictionary of Dictionary and Zen defines karma in the following way. Karma is the universal law of cause and effect. The deed, karma, produces a fruit under certain circumstances. For a deed to produce fruit, it must be morally good or bad and be conditioned by volitional impulse, which, in that it leaves a trace in the psyche of the doer, leads their destiny in the direction determined by the effect of the deed. The effect of an action, which can be of the nature of body, speech, or mind, is not primarily determined by the act, but rather by the intention of the action. It's the intention of actions that cause a karmic effect to arise. When a deed cannot be carried out, the intention toward it exists, and this alone produces an effect. Only a deed that's free from desire, hate, and delusion is without karmic effect. So our commentators and our teachers tell us that greed, hate, and delusion are consciously acted out or visited upon another person or things by the things that we do physically or things that we say to another, but also by our thoughts about this person. These are not things that just happen without cause. So what our teachers tell us is that karma is what we do to ourselves by our body, speech, and mind. And I think this is a little different than some of us, including myself, may have thought about karma. Karma is what I do to myself. So given that we personally create our karma, or things that result from what we do, think, or say, how can we undo the effects of harmful karma? So I want to look at this question by quoting some of the work of the Buddhist scholar Barbara O'Brien. She tells us that evil as an external force is foreign to Buddhism. That's unlike some other religious teachings, which see that evil is an external force that traps us. But she says the act of sorting humanity into good and evil is a trap. When we think they are evil, it's possible to justify doing harm to them. She goes on to say that when we think they're evil and can justify doing harm, people will become intoxicated by our own self-righteousness, or who believe in our own intrinsic moral superiority. And this gives us permission to do terrible things to those that we hate or fear. She points out that the teaching of dependent origination says that everything is in a web of interconnection and reflects every other part of that web. She goes on and she quotes Buddha's teaching in the Dhammapada, quote, by oneself, indeed, is evil done. By oneself is one defiled. By oneself, indeed, is one purified. Purity and impurity depend upon oneself. No one purifies another. Buddhism teaches us that purity and impurity depend upon ourselves. No one purifies another. It's something that we create, not something that we are, or something that an outside force infects us with. She points out that Karma, like the word evil, is often used without any kind of understanding. Karma is not fate. It's not part of some cosmic justice system. In Buddhism, there's no God to direct karma to reward some people and punish others. It is just cause and effect. In Buddhism, it has a specific meaning. It means only volitional action, not all action. Karma in Buddhism doesn't mean its effect. The effect of karma is the fruit or the result of karma. We create our own karma by intentional acts of body, speech, and mind. Only acts that are without desire, without hate, and do not arise from delusion, do not produce karma. And we are affected by the karma we create, which seems a lot like reward and punishment. But we're rewarding ourselves or punishing ourselves. As a Zen teacher once told her, what you do is what happens to you. On the other hand, it's important for us to understand that karma is not the only force at work in the world. And terrible things really do happen to good people. For example, when a natural disaster strikes a community and causes death and destruction, and we can think of hurricanes and floods in the South in our country. If someone speculates that those harmed by the disaster suffered bad karma, or else say that God must be punishing them, this really is not a skillful way of understanding karma. In Buddhism, there's no God and no supernatural agent rewarding us or punishing us. Further, forces other than karma may cause many difficult and harmful conditions. Things like the weather, fire, floods, hurricanes, unrestricted access to guns. All of these things can harm ourselves and harm others. But when something terrible strikes others, we should not just shrug and assume that for some reason they deserved it. This isn't a Buddhist teaching. Ultimately, we do all suffer together. I want to quote from a talk given by Taigen Dan Layton, one of our Zen teachers. It was given a month after the September 11th attacks in 2001. And it seems like it's an appropriate thing to remember and think about as we look at our withdrawal of forces from Afghanistan. Here's a part of his talk about the destruction of the Twin Towers in New York City. I'm quoting here. I don't think it's helpful to think about forces of evil and forces of good. There are good forces in the world, people interested in kindness, such as the response of the firemen, and all of the people who have been making donations to relief funds for the people affected. The practice, our reality, our life, our aliveness, our non-evilness, is just to pay attention and do what we can. To respond as we can, as we feel we can right now, as in being positive and not falling for fear. It's not that someone up there or somebody in the universe somehow wants to create harmful karma, harmful effects on others. We can't say that it's all going to work out. Karma and the precepts are about taking responsibility for sitting on your cushion and for expressing that's in your life in whatever way you can and in whatever way may be positive. So what Layton and O'Brien are telling us is that we cannot with certainty deal with evil acts based on some kind of campaign against evil. We can't know exactly if we're doing it right. But can we be willing to not know what is the right thing to do, but just pay attention to how it feels right now, to respond, to do what we think is best, to keep paying attention to what we're doing, to stay upright, sit upright in the midst of all of the confusion. This is how Leighton thinks we should respond as a country. It's a difficult situation, and we really are wrestling with all of this individually and as a country. And clearly we've been wrestling with this in Afghanistan for decades. So that's the background I wanted to present for you about karma, evil, and how they start with us in our body, speech, and mind, but are not necessarily something that's created by an outside being. So I'd like to ask us each, have you ever created harmful karma with your body, with your speech, your mind, with your thoughts? And can we give any examples of this? I'm going to start giving an example out of my life. I have a son-in-law. He has very different attitudes towards guns, Black people, politics, and COVID. I've had to learn to step back from such topics with him. But even though my speech now is under better control, I confess, I really do hold difficult opinions about him. So I have to recognize that in my relationship with my son-in-law, I'm creating harmful karma, not for him, but for myself. If I can just breathe deeply, sit on my cushion, and not judge myself or him, it would be better for all of us, for each of us. But I confess, I fail on this a lot. So I want to stop there and ask if any of you have any examples from your own life of creating your own harmful karma in your relationship with others.
Feel free to go ahead and speak up or raise your hand if you prefer.
Yeah.
Rugen.
Yeah. So, as the first thing you mentioned that came to my mind about, harmful karma regarding body, and my mind instantly went to the blueberry donut I had consumed prior to coming to here, and that the effects that it's having on my digestive system. And so, but that was the first thing that jumped to mind. I think the next thing that kind of jumps to mind is, I know many of us have dealt with, marriage relationships and whatnot, and, the decision kind of how to work in the relationship with a marriage that's not working well, and with kids. And then the question always becomes, what is the least harmful path forward, given the, what is the least harmful path forward given all parties involved, knowing that there's not necessarily a perfect or a right or an excellent outcome regardless. And so that's just something that comes to mind that I've struggled with dealt with in my own life. And then the question then becomes, seeing clearly enough to be able to really, really understand the consequences. So anyway, just my two anecdotes.
Thank you, Rugen. Sangak.
How do I hate thee? Let me count the ways. I think with the pronouncement by Sakyamuni Buddha at the time, being one of the first recorded psychologists, in terms of the depth of understanding that arose from the idea of impermanence. and the idea of interconnectivity. That if we hang on to the idea of permanence and the idea of isolationism, that we are bound to create difficulty for ourselves. To understand that as a human condition, as you were discussing in O'Brien, when you quoted her, made me quickly go back to Rabbi Kushner, Harold Kushner, and why do bad things happen to good people? So what struck me when you were talking, Seigetsu, was we simply enter into the moment as it occurs. And when we do so, all of our senses are responding to the moment and we get some kind of signal and we decide whether or not we're going to respond to the signal or not. So in some ways, we all get thoughts. It's how we react, or what you were saying. It is the reaction to the stimulus that causes us to be either feeling positive or negative. And if we allow ourselves, I think, to continue to make these differentiations and gradations and expectations and measuring capabilities and so forth and so on, that we're bound to draw a very contrite idea of self. That is, I am it, you are not. So I think the beginning of the repentance verse is most important. And to me, what it says is, hey, listen, you are just like everyone else. And everyone else is just like you. So with that understanding, we can at least look at the interconnectivity in a way that we can shift somewhat from greed, hate, and delusion to the idea of, oh, okay, so we're in this together. A little bit of compassion comes in. So two things that have always struck me. One was that we are what we do. We do what we are, kind of thing. And we can work on that. The other is the non-karmic cause and effect. That is, the cause and effect that does not come from human intervention, but comes from things outside the human sphere. For example, asteroids, cosmic rays, sun flares, these kinds of things, and how they also affect us. So here we are sitting with all of our feelings and sensations going through us at the same time. We are being bombarded by the digital world in terms of presenting false images of ourselves on screens. I think it does require us to take a breath and realize the depth and the extension of the teachings of the Buddha. And I very much appreciate the topic and look forward to what others have to say.
Thank you. Hojo, you had your hand up next.
I'll wait till the end.
Thank you. Another volunteer? I thought I saw Kuo-san trying to raise her hand.
Oh, I don't know if I was trying to raise my hand. I was just looking to see where my mute button was, but as long as I'm unmuted. So body, speech, and mind, I painfully remember, it seems like I review all the time. And I remember very painful things that I've done to people since I can remember remembering. And some of them just still sting when I think of some of the things that I unskillfully or through ignorance or defending my sense of self, even as a kid, and I think it's getting a little bit better. I feel like I have some control with the body part of me now. My speech is coming along pretty well. Like that's kind of a tricky one, but my mind still is just a mess. But I think it's very good that at least I am noticing, and I'm not beating myself up, but when I see other people struggling with the same issues, or they have a little bit more trouble kind of containing whatever it is that can cause you to just kind of let it all out, I can tell that at least I have a bit more compassion for them, because I see it in me all the time, in my mind. I can pretty much control my speech most of the time in my body, but it's kind of an illusion, and I'm not fooling myself. So that for me is the really difficult part. But I do now feel more of a connection to just about, I can't think of anyone that doesn't deserve to be thought of as having Buddha nature and receiving some compassion, even in this strife-filled time of politics and stuff. So that's where I stand right now. My mind still is the one I'm having a lot of trouble with. So thank you.
Thank you, Kua-san. Is there someone else who feels compelled to speak? Yes, Mission Mountain Zen.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm compelled, but I've got a couple of things. You know, to me, this is a wonderful topic. It's a very important topic that is incredibly layered and deep and important. You know, it's like, I feel like, you know, acts of karma for myself, you know, it's like when something happens or I do something, and maybe my thoughts around what I'm doing are not quite in line with what I'm doing. Maybe I'm a good boy, I'm doing good things, but maybe there's some resistance mentally. I think that separation is a fine version of karmic activity. It's when, you know, it's when we do action through body, speech, and mind that are driven by more self-centered notions. You know, it could be greed, hate, and delusion, and you know, there's an infinite number of finer categories that fall into this. And so, you know, this is why our Zazen practice is so wonderful, because it goes right to the source. It looks at this moment, what is going on, and what are we doing? You know, what's our response to what's going on? Am I thinking and disturbed because the period is so long, and all of these kind of things, which are very self-centered, self-oriented? Or am I allowing myself just to let go of that self-centeredness and just be in the moment completely? You know, and I think when we're not totally in the moment completely, this is where karmic habitual activity can fester. And we can create habits that are not who we are, but which gives us problems, causes suffering for ourselves and others. And so I think to think of karma, you know, we can think of big examples about, oh my gosh, this morning I was an idiot, you know, I did this, that, and the other, and I really regret it. But it also is a very finite matter of moment to moment. What are we doing? Are we really wholeheartedly taking care of this moment? Or are we thinking about this moment and doing it from a self-centered perspective? You know, the one example I can think of offhand is, you know, for example, if a mother, somehow a child runs out in front of a car on a street, okay, so this example, well, the mother is not going in through any intellectual process to know what to do. She is not thinking about, well, should I do this? Should I call the police? What should I? She immediately runs out, takes care of it, and, in that selfless act of just taking care of this moment that doesn't require any regurgitation mentally, I think this is a selfless, an act that would leave a small, if any, karmic impact. There may be the processing after the fact may create more karmic impact than just doing it right away. So anyway, those are some of the comments I would throw into the hopper.
Thank you. Another response? Lee, did you have your hand raised?
Well, I guess I did, just to be part of the group and to say I too struggle with, some of the body, speech, and mind. Of course, going all the way back to childhood, I still have some issues with my sisters and my brothers, things like that. And but I do think, like as others have said, probably our at least my most significant one is the mind. And that is when, maybe somebody's bothering me or I feel, maybe self-righteous or something, how could they, or something like that. And my mind goes to all these, silly places. And then I come around to a place where it's like, not all these thoughts are worth following. And then I send a few butterflies and rainbows to those thoughts. And I have to say, I guess sort of my compassion out to myself and others. And I do find that that helps. And it helps me when I breathe and come to the moment and get my body, speech, and mind all in line again. So thank you for the Zen practice and Sangha.
Thank you, Lee. PJ.
Hi. I guess going along the template of body, speech, and mind, I felt a lot of body karma even today from perhaps not having as rigorous a Zazen practice as I could have. I felt a lot of pain and things that have been going on. So that's a body example. Speech, I think of times when I've given into anger and said things that I regretted later on. I also have a sort of a question. We started this discussion saying that karma is really in the realm of you, like what you have done and it affects you. And I know that the broad sense of you includes everything, but I've heard people talk about universal karma and even things like the karma of being born in America and the actions that our countries or our communities have taken that affect us. I just wonder how that squares with the more individualistic notion of karma that we've been talking about.
I'm making a note here. This is a good question. We have someone else who would raise a question or make a comment. Was that a hand up at Mission Mountain?
Yeah, I might as well follow my predecessor. And it got me thinking about lots of things. And I certainly have a tank full of body, speech, and mind that I continue to work on. But one thing that I just thought about from quite some time ago, I had been involved in a lot of both social justice work and political work over the years. And as a younger guy, I found that some of my actions were strengthening the opposition I was speaking against by acting like they were, but thinking that I was right and they were wrong. And, one of my first teachers when I was in high school was the book Be Here Now, Being Now Here by Baba Ram Das, given to me by my older brother's friend. And I remember in more recent years, when some of the wars that we were processing in the Middle East seemed unjust. And a group of us chose to make a statement. But on this occasion, we chose to make a statement in a nonviolent civil disobedience way. And that was the grounding of our action. And after that action happened, what we found was that got more attention and consideration than most any other political or social action I've been involved in. And instead of jamming one side against the other, we just opened our hand, if you will, much like Ochiyama's opening the hand of thought, this notion of instead of pushing against, open up. And don't resist the opposition, don't push back. Just be your true nature. And as much as we understood what we were at the time, we found that our display of presenting our position in a nonviolent, non-confrontational action, at least not pushing against the other, but just presenting ourselves in front of the other, resounded through all different people that might normally have been wanting to push back against us. So I just think there were some lessons that we all learned then, and hopefully have carried forward to how we can speak to an issue of perhaps injustice or the way we see it, without either harming ourselves and putting us further down in a hole, or also calling upon others that they are wrong, but giving them an opportunity to consider the discussion.
Thank you. Okio.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Seigetsu. This is wonderful to be talking about this. And I find it very empowering that I am responsible for my own karma and no one else is to blame. And so maybe I can do something about it. I also think that thoughts are so powerful. And I agree with, it's those thoughts that can be killers, that can be really killers. And I know, like just with my relationship with my husband, if I think that he's not doing things the way they should be done, or he's not taking care of himself the way I think he should take care of himself, there is a tension and I get irritable. But when I drop that away and go to, well, I don't know, who am I to judge? The atmosphere in the house is much different, much more pleasant. And I'm not very good at, I usually go to the irritation first, and then I get tired of that. I don't like it. And so then I try to go to the other, a little more understanding and compassion for this poor person who has to live with me. I also, Sensei has taught us, when I feel like someone's attacking me or some injustice is being done, instead of me jumping into the fighting ring, I can say something like, is that so? And I wish I could remember it more. I so wish I could remember it more, because I get in there and then I realize I'm in there, and I don't want to be in there. I don't want to be in there. So it's a real practice, and I love, Zazen makes me more aware of my thinking, and those thoughts I know are so powerful. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mokyo. Let's see, Jeff, would you care to make an observation?
Well, I deal with 18 to 21-year-old young men every day in college. And so, and as I've gotten older, they've gotten a lot younger. And so I deal a lot with speech and mind because there's a lot of times I'm getting better, but there's a lot of times I think things and I spout it off too quickly and come across as too rough and abrasive. So I've been working a lot on thinking things and not maybe translating it to speech so quickly. And, I think that Zazen has helped me do that in some ways.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's see, Carla, I don't know if you would care to say anything or not. We don't have an image for you.
Hi, yes, I'm still here. And thank you so much for the topic. I too was looking forward to this talk. I guess what I'll say is, I don't know. There's so many things in my life that are inexplicable. And when we're talking about this idea of what happens behind an act, especially when you're talking about individual acts, I've been working on myself in various aspects for a long time. And I think, when I think about an intention, like, in work, I'm not working in higher education now, but I was, and how you want to do one thing and then it just feels like, at least for me, all these other agendas kind of undermine anything. And so when I hear you say it's the intention and whether or not you're greed or suffering from hate or some sort of delusion, I'm like, okay, that's good, but I think I'm always deluded. I mean, it's like, and I could talk about my family. It's my intention was to distance myself from their sort of behaviors that I found unacceptable. But now here I am at this point in my life, and I thought I had a good intention, but maybe it was self-centered. I don't know. I mean, so I think the thing for me right now is just to do what I heard either you or someone else say, and that is to do the time and effort that it takes to be inhabiting each transaction with a person or with a situation or an organization. And that's, that's very skillful. I don't know that. I think it's something to keep practicing with. So, but I am really glad to hear that the conversation is not about, karma as a thing that, makes or breaks or brings good or bad or that kind of thing. So that's my confused contribution to the conversation. Thank you.
Carla, thank you very much for that very clear conversation. I think we may have heard from all but one person at this point, but before I turn to that person, is there anyone who would care to make another comment? Hojo, the floor is yours.
Yeah, that's where I belong. On the floor. Just want to make a couple of general comments, but the reason I raised my hand after David, he and I have been talking about these kind of issues. Marriage is, or family is the most difficult dharma of all. And priests in Japan, I understand, don't try to deal with their own sons. They send them to somebody else. Matsuoka was an exception to that. His father was his teacher, and it was very difficult. And I was married too young. My high school sweetheart, I met at 17. We were married at 19 when I had just begun college. And we had children too young, about 5 years later. That marriage came to an end after about 10 years, and it wasn't a pretty picture. And I think we are still living with the karmic consequences of all of that. My first wife is deceased some time ago. She asked me to do her initiation ceremony on her deathbed. So I think you have to look at karma as not really individuated, but it's something that we share. We share the karma of our nation, as we can see in war. We share the karma of our family, obviously, and we share the karma of any Sangha group that we join to some degree, to different degrees. So I think you want to think of it as a bundle of karmic effects, maybe. And I think instead of saying evil, all my past and evil karma, the reason we hesitate to use such emotion-laden words, and instead we say harmful karma, it means that the karmic action, volitional and so forth, just gets in the way of where we're all trying to go. And so it's harmful, or as they say in Tao Te Ching, it does not further the positive path or direction. So we use the word, we substitute for the word evil, we substitute harmful, and we also substitute ignorance for evil, in the sense that in Buddhism, just as there is no God, there is no devil, there is no Satan, there is no absolute principle of evil, there is no absolute principle of good. But these two terms are pretty humanistic. What is good and evil for a human being will not be for another animal on this planet. Necessarily, it might be. You have a pet cat here, and what's good for her is good for me, I guess. But so we use the word harmful, we use the word ignorance. So when I look back upon the mistakes I have made, I don't see them as I was creating evil, or I was creating harmful consequences, yes, but it certainly was not my intention in most cases. But out of ignorance, I behaved in a certain way, and it created karmic consequences that I still live with. So I think this is the kind of patience we try to develop with ourselves, monkey mind and so forth, on the cushion, our own behavior. And in doing so, if we overcome our own ignorance and we develop patience with ourselves, then we're going to be much more able to be patient with others. And I think that's kind of the heart of the Metta Sutta. We start by having compassion for them. Remember, compassion means suffer with. It doesn't mean you pity somebody else because you're superior to them. It just means we're all in the same boat. And that boat is floating on an ocean of ignorance. As we look back on our lives, we can see it. And, as Dogen says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Hopefully not make that same mistake again. But he also said, life is one long, continuous mistake. And in the creative arts, where I come from, sciences, design, and so forth, you have to make mistakes. You have to fail, or you cannot progress. You cannot learn. But they can be pretty painful.
Thank you, Hojo. Is there anyone else who would like to make a capping comment? Sengaku? Anyone from Mission Mountain? We have not heard from our MC, Randy. Would you care to say something, Randy?
I just thought it was a timely reminder of the role of intention, and it's so commonly thought of in, when we hear it in the popular culture, it always seems reactive. Our karma is a result of something that we have done and it's too late, we've done it. But to think of that in that proactive sense, in terms of setting our intention, in terms of living by vow, I thought that is something that I personally need to keep working on, keeping my focus proactive instead of reactive.
Ojo.
I just wanted to say that I think Kosetsu's mustache and beard are going to have positive karmic consequences.
If there are no further comments, thank you all for joining in this conversation. I appreciate your willingness to share what can be very deep and personal experiences. And let us take all of those things back to the cushion with them and let them diffuse, so to speak. Gasho.